Hello everyone, this is Arif, and today we are starting with the CIA Part 2 video lecture series. And here we are with the Unit 1, which is about basics of business. This is my brief intro on my career and profile trajectory. And just in case if you are interested, you can pause this video and read it. And we can also connect via LinkedIn. If you look at the entire syllabus of CIA Part 2, it's a bit very complicated, especially if you are unable to structure in a more logical way. I personally found it difficult to understand what they are trying to teach and how it's logically connected to what we do as an internal auditor. Based on my experience, I have gone through the entire syllabus overview, and I have classified the entire syllabus into 6 phases. Phase 1, which is about understanding the business. Phase 2 is about how to plan an audit engagement. Phase 3 is about understanding the control frameworks. Phase 4 is about understanding the business processes. Phase 5 is about how we carried out our audit engagement field work, and Phase 6 is about reporting. In total, we have 14 units, which are divided based on different phases in the entire audit cycle within the CIA Part 2 syllabus. In our today's video lecture, we will be going through Phase 1, which is about business, understanding of basics of business, and subsequently we will be going through each and every unit of CIA Part 2 syllabus. In this slide, I try to give you an overall understanding of each unit coverage in the entire CIA syllabus and expected number of MCQs that might appear in the exam from each unit. As per my understanding, the entire 14 units that we will be covering in this video series, each unit comprises of 7% of coverage, and presumably you can expect 7 MCQs appearing from each unit in the CIA Part 2 exam. As you are aware that the CIA Part 2 exam comprises of 100 MCQs and it's 2-hour duration. In Unit 1, we will be discussing about basics of business, which I will be elaborating further in the next slide. In Unit 1, Basics of Business, we will be discussing about what is the purpose of having a business, and the structure of an organization. We will be also discussing about the COSO framework because it enables us to achieve the organizational objectives. It's a control framework, but it enables us to achieve the organizational objectives. So we will be discussing about that. We will be also discussing about different business models and processes within the company, and associated risk internally, and then external risk in terms of market influences, how the external environment impact the organization in terms of competition, in terms of technological changes, in terms of some other factors. And lastly, we will see how these all topics are relevant for internal auditor from the internal audit engagement perspective. So this unit basically gives us a very comprehensive context for before we start the internal audit engagement to understand about the businesses at a bare minimum, with a few concepts which are very essential for any internal auditor to understand before they embark on audit engagements. The first thing which we have to understand as an internal auditor, that to perform an internal audit engagement, we need to have an entity. and there are two types of mainly entities. The first one is profit-making entity, and the second one is non-for-profit entities. In both entities, our main objective is, for whatever the purpose of that entity is, for whatever the reasons they are being established, are they fulfilling those objectives or those purpose or not? In service-based organization like NGOs, we look at what is the purpose of that NGO. Non-for-profit organization, for example, is it to eradicate poverty from the world or from a community? Is it to provide literacy and education to unprivileged people? And then we build that context before we start an audit engagement. Similarly, in a profit-making organization, our main objective is whether the organization is generating enough profit for its shareholders or not. This is a very narrow definition as per today modern business concepts, because these days businesses are not only responsible to provide profitability. This is the core. Obviously, if it doesn't make profit, it will declare a bankruptcy. So it is the bare minimum. However, over and above, there are other objectives that the organization has to achieve. For example, having a positive footprint in the society, providing equality in terms of employment and the way they treat their employees, being fair to their customers, fulfill the obligation of their vendors, and so on and so forth. But at a core, at a bare minimum, the objective of an organization is to create value and earn profitability by delivering goods or services. Organization could be manufacturing or could be in services. For instance, providing travel services, providing internet services, providing telecom services, telecommunication services, marketing agencies could be part of it. So this is the bare minimum. What their goal is, once we know the objective of any organization, we see where they want to reach. What is their ultimate destination, where they are aiming for? It is the growth. Every organization wants to grow bigger and bigger. They want to satisfy their customers. They want to ensure efficiency and effectiveness in their processes. And they have to be a good compliant organization operating in a country or a multinational in a globe. So compliance could be they have to be responsible and being legal and compliant with the laws, regulations, and benchmark and best practices. So this is the core of understanding the purpose of a business, and then we move to the next step, how the organization is being divided, or what are the core activities that is being carried out in more or less in every organization. So there are finances involved, and when we talk about finances, we have to be mindful about cash flow reporting and recording of the finances, how these processes are being operated and managed. Then every organization, they have their core operation. A manufacturing will have a production facility, a logistic, sales and marketing, and some other activities. However, in a service-based organization, it would be relatively different services. So the core operation of the company we need to understand, and what are the key processes within the core operation. Then in some companies we have R&D, research and development. For example, we have sectors like pharmaceuticals, where they try to find new medical recipes for different kind of cures. R&D could also be in a tech environment, where we need to build new apps or programs to make people life easy. So R&D could also be in production in terms of consumer products, biscuits, juices, and that kind of entity. And there are some entities which doesn't require, for example, logistic, that doesn't require a major R&D. However, they still try to be more efficient in their processes, but they might not have a proper R&D department. So R&D department could be part of the structure. Then sales and marketing, similarly HR, hiring, firing, training, promotion, how the companies manage their resources, and IT. These are some of the very vital functions that is required for any company. In many companies, you can call it as a structure, functions, department, division, it doesn't matter, but how the organization is trying to achieve their objective, this is more important to understand, and by what way they are designing their processes and grouping activities to achieve those objectives. So this is the bare minimum at a basic level you have to understand about the business. As we have understood the structure, then the next step comes the operations, how these structures enables to run effectively the company's operation. In this slide, we will be discussing about those operations. Within the company, we have a certain kind of operation that is being performed irrespective of their sectors and industries. For example, revenue, how the sales is being generated. Is it by selling goods or services? How efficient they are? What are the controls in terms of making sure that we keep on increasing our sales and meet the customer demands? Then expenses, how we manage our expenses, material, rents, direct, indirect expenses, wages. This is also very much important. Then supply chain, how efficiently we provide services to our customers, be it services, be it physical products. Then customer experience, are we evaluating whether our customers are being fulfilled with their needs or not? So this is also an important area in terms of operation that we have to be very much mindful about. Regulations, the legal and compliance department plays their role in terms of ensuring the formation of the company the right way, and then the abiding by companies' laws, regulations, best practices. So this is all. Governance is very much important in terms of the operational, at the top of the operation, and who are in charge of governance, the board of directors and the top management. They ensure that the companies are managed in a proper way. There is proper accountability, proper job description, qualified people. So this is how the governance is play their role in operation. Risk management, how the organization is identifying, assessing, mitigating, reporting, monitoring internal and external risk just to be in the game. So this is another element that that not directly but indirectly support the operations. And then internal controls, how we are safeguarding our assets, how we are ensuring reliability of the information, accuracy of the information, completeness of the information. This is done through different control procedures. For example, having proper policies and procedures, hiring the right people, having proper job descriptions, proper systems in place, performance reviews, training and development. So this is all part of internal controls, which enables the organization to have a proper running operations. So the first thing which we understood from the previous slide is what is the purpose of the organization. The second thing which we tried to understand was how the organization structure is being formed, in which way. And the third thing is the core operations of the organization. Now we are moving to the second section of Unit 1, which is about control frameworks. In understanding the control framework, it is very much important to understand that COSO, there are many control frameworks, and the one which we are going to discuss a bit more in detail is COSO ERM framework, internal control framework, which is part of our syllabus. Whenever we talk about COSO framework, I have noticed that majority of the people, they confuse between COSO ERM framework and COSO integrated internal control framework. There are two frameworks sponsored by the COSO organization committee, which has different purpose, though they complement each other, but each has its own purpose. The first one, COSO ERM, is for risk management, how you manage your risk. And the second one, which is COSO integrated internal control framework, it is more at the organizational level to understand that how our controls impact the achievement of the organizational objectives, which we will be doing side-by-side comparison before I delve into details of COSO internal control framework, which is part of this unit. The same COSO internal control framework and the ERM framework, I have previously captured those concepts in my CIA Part 1 syllabus, and here I'm not going to re-record the entire discussion. However, I'm using the same slides, so if you find a little bit of contextually a little bit distraction, or if I'm referring to another unit, that unit was reference to the CIA Part 1, because it's the same concept and there is no point repeating or recording the same thing just to be more efficient. So in the next slides, you will find my videos, which I've put it forward here in the same videos which I recorded for CIA Part 1 in explaining the COSO integrated internal control framework. Before we start the third section about control frameworks, there is one big confusion a lot of people have, and I used to have as well, because COSO has two frameworks, and I used to wonder what are the difference between these two frameworks. One is a risk management framework, we call it COSO ERM framework, which we have previously discussed under the unit where we discussed the risk part of the GRC. And another control framework we have, which we are going to cover in this unit, which is in the next slide, which is about COSO internal control. So COSO has basically two frameworks. One is related to risk, which we earlier have covered, and the other one is related to internal control. So this clarity needs to be there before we embark on the details of what exactly is COSO internal control. Just to give you a brief snapshot without going into technicalities, because you can always refer to those videos on ERM and see the technical model, but just to give you an holistic conceptually understanding of these two frameworks. So the first framework, COSO ERM, which we have previously discussed in previous unit, is about enterprise-wide risk management. So how as a whole entity any company manage their risk, whereas the COSO internal control frameworks talks about the day-to-day effective operations of running a company. Because in the previous one we talk about how we can link the ERM with the strategy and objective of the organization and how we can achieve. However, in the current one, the COSO internal control, we talk about day-to-day operational risks and how we can manage those. Similarly, both are proactive. These frameworks help us to set the direction as long-term direction and day-to-day direction within the company. The first one talks about a bigger picture and forward-looking risk appetite, strategy alignment, whereas the COSO internal control framework talks about the policies, procedures, check and balances on day-to-day operation. An easy example would be, for example, if you are sitting in Titanic, or if you're sailing in Titanic, so the direction where you are intending to move from one source place to your destination, and how many challenges that might come while you're sailing, for example, storms, running out of food, water, any pirate that may come across. So all these challenges you will be managing by using COSO risk management framework. Whereas how on a daily basis you manage each and operations, the engine room, the daily providing the food, so day-to-day operations that you will be that you need to manage, you will be using COSO internal control framework. So this is a brief snapshot which I wanted to give you an overview on before we go to discuss the technicalities and the model of COSO internal control. And I hope this would have given you some holistic view about these two frameworks. There are multiple control frameworks, but one of the few which are being extensively covered in the IIA course is COSO framework. If you remember, in the previous sessions we discussed about COSO ERM framework, and today we will be talking about COSO integrated controls integrated framework. It defines the control definition. What is internal control? It basically the action taken by the management and the board in order to ensure that the risks are managed effectively and provide reasonable assurance on the achievement of organizational objectives in terms of operations, reporting, and compliance, that all these activities are being managed properly. What are the COSO controls objectives? You can remember these objectives by acronym OCR, which means or ORC, whichever order you use. O refer to operations, C refers to compliance, and R refers to reporting. That we have to ensure that we have enough controls where we achieve our financial performance or financial objectives. We drive our productivity, quality, we ensure innovation and customer satisfaction. So these are the elements where we have to have strong controls. In terms of compliance, our controls should adhere to all the laws, regulation, policies, guidelines. In terms of reporting, our controls should enable us to receive or to transmit the information in a timely manner, in a secure manner, and it has to be in a transparently being provided all the information and on a timely basis and concise, obviously. COSO, component for internal controls, can be remembered through an acronym as CRIME, which means that what are the key component of internal controls. So control activities are like what are the key controls which are defined within any transactions or an activity. So those controls could be defined. Then we have to carry out the risk assessment that these controls are effective enough to manage those risks. Information and communication is one of the key elements of the good control framework, that it is being timely provided. Monitoring and the control environment. So monitoring means that we have to ongoing keep on ensuring that all the controls are effectively working, the risks are being managed properly, and as the environment change, we change our controls and we monitor our risk as well, because demographic risk could also change over the period of time. And control control environment overall means that the organization have a tone from the top, and the organization structured in a more efficient manner. They have policies and procedures, people are aware, trainings are being provided, job description is there. So this is all part of the control environment. This is the graphical presentation of COSO control framework. Here you can see that all the key element of the control, the component of the internal control, control environment, risk control activities, information and communication and monitoring activities are defined. And it reflects that these all activity are performed to achieve the control objectives, which are operations, reporting and compliance, that these three areas are effectively working, and we are ensuring all the risks are being managed. And this happen across the organization. So you can see the third side of the cube that where it says entity level, divisional, operational and functional, means these controls are being integrated and flow within the organization from top to bottom and bottom to up. So this is a very beautiful diagram which shows what we have discussed in the earlier slide. Again, here just to quickly go through what is control environment. So in control environment is basically the overall behavior and the action taken by the top management in regards to the control environment, be it in terms of composition of the board, establishing of the different committees to focus on certain area of the businesses by the board members, reporting line, to establish reporting line, to establish role and responsibility, to review their performance, to set benchmark standards in terms of policies and procedures, KPIs, KRIs, and to assess whether individuals are complying with those standards or not. So this is all part of the control environment. Risk assessment, when we talk about the risk assessment, which we also covered in the last sessions, risk assessment has a process in which we identify the risk, we assess the risk, we try to manage the risk, we prioritize the risk. So this whole activity of risk management encompasses, and this is also one of the key elements of the control environment. Control activities are basically how we manage those risks through technological, through automated controls, through manual controls, through compensatory controls, through detective controls. There are different ways how you can manage those risks. Lastly, the information and communication. It is about that how effectively and timely and in the best possible manner we are circulating the information or receiving the information or synthesizing or processing that information. Information flow within the organization like a blood. So if you have a good control over the information, there is less likelihood that any adverse event can happen, because if there is a good culture within the organization and the bad news flows faster than the good news, so the action will be prompt. Right, so it's similar to the human body, that if the blood circulation is smooth, there is the body is more strong to take to resist against any adverse internal or external virus. But if there is a problem in the circulation and the blood doesn't circulate to the valves, to the heart, then even angina attack can happen. Right, similar to that, within the organization, information plays a very vital role. Monitoring and monitoring activities is basically that we have to keep on monitoring the controls, the risks, the overall structure within the organization. This is very much important because now we are working these days in a very dynamic organization. Everything is linked to another thing. The companies are affected by their competitors, by their political interference. There is a lot of factors that affect the organization, so therefore we have to keep on monitoring. So this is overall and a key summary of what constitute the COSO control framework. It is important for us to understand first what is the purpose of an organization and how it is being structured, and to understand what are the control frameworks that enable the organization to achieve their objectives. Then it comes, what are the business model and processes that are important for an organization to deliver its objective. Every organization has a mission, vision, and strategy. Mission is basically why they are being into existence. For example, if you are in a sport industries, their mission is to provide the platform for new players to perform their best in that entity. Their vision could be to win the World Cup. Their strategy could be to get the best player in their club. This is in terms of services. Similarly, it goes for the industry as well, in which you can identify what is the purpose of that organization being in existence. I have seen, based on my practical experience, that a lot of organizations, they have very theoretical mission, vision, and strategy, but they are still making profits. So how is that possible? Because they are meeting the purpose, though they have not well defined their mission and vision, but they are living by those mission and vision to their day-to-day activities. Just it is not being well reflected in documentation or not being updated timely doesn't mean that they doesn't have it. And sometime an organization you will find which are doing mediocre and average activity, they are not performing to their best because they do not have vision. It's similarly to us. If we do not have a mission and a vision in our life, we will just get one certification and being happy as an internal auditor without pursuing all the different levels within the organization, or tomorrow being productive in the society by providing our own private practices or teaching or through helping others to reach their objectives. And you will find there are certain people, they are happy the way their 9-to-5 job without doing any extra effort. And some people, they go over and above and they try to excel in their field and to be much more productive to a lot of to the masses. There is nothing right and wrong about it, but this shows a difference between an average person and an extraordinary person. So similarly, the same rules apply in the organization setup as well. In any business, there are mainly two types of main processes. Either it could be an ongoing processes, which we call in operations, and there are certain departments which are responsible for effective execution of the operation. For example, in a manufacturing company, the production line, the supply chain, these are all part of the operation. And then there are projects. The projects have a defined start and the start and the end. Unlike operations, the operations are ongoing, but a project has timelines, budget, defined cost, a start and the end. For example, a project would be automation of the manual process. A project could be implementation of an ERP system. A project could be buying a new machinery. These are very specific projects which support the operation for further efficiency and effectiveness. Then we have management and support functions, which are not part of the operation, but they support and facilitate while being in the background. For example, HR, they hire the best resources for the organization and for the operations people as well. Then we have IT. They ensure the connectivity of the IT system and resilient system with the proper controls. Then we have accounting. Then we have some other R&D, compliance function, legal function. These are all support functions. In any organization, we have either we carried out the operation by ourselves, and sometime when an organization perceives that this is not a core activity, then they might outsource those activities to some other entity with a fixed pay rate or with a defined service fee. For example, outsourcing the hiring HR services, outsourcing the IT services, and sometime in some organization, for example, within the internal audit department, they outsource certain audit engagements. For example, cybersecurity in IT. If the company is not too much into IT or tech based, so it's a one-off activity, so you don't have to hire a full-time resources for once in a while audit engagement, so it's much more cheaper for them. There are risks in terms of outsourcing, dependence and loss of control. However, because they are non-core, so that risk somehow we accept. There are certain controls which we can put in place to overcome those risks by having proper clear contract terms and clauses, by monitoring the outsourced activities and ensuring that there are proper reporting, and internal auditor can always audit those outsourcing activities to give an independent assurance to the management on their performance. In today's time, we cannot separate ourselves from IT, and automation is a big part to play in the organization. And no organization in today's time can exist without having a proper support controls on their IT activities or services. IT has its own benefits, and it also has some risk which we have to overcome through mitigating controls. For example, in many organizations, when there are field for age, you have to put a number, otherwise it will not accept. So we can have certain kind of validation just to ensure that the input errors by the data entry can be avoided. Similarly, IT provide audit trails, changes in the transactions, who made those changes, when it is being approved, by whom it is being approved, and we can keep that record in review in case if it is required. It also enables us to provide access based on the roles and ensure segregation of duties. The risk of unauthorized access, data manipulation, sometimes the management bypass those controls. For example, they do not keep a record of proper change management. So these could be the risk. There are mainly two types of processing happening in the IT environment. Either it's real time, for example, in hotel reservation, airline reservations, where we have to provide on-time data, or it could be a batch processing. For example, you have a payroll module in which you run every month or every bi-monthly, and it doesn't require everyday use. So this is two different forms or modes of processing. It is important to understand because the risk of anything goes wrong in the real time is much higher because it has a direct impact. So we have to have more preventive control. However, in a batch processing, we might have a little bit of tolerance, and we have to have similar kind of associated controls that we can ensure that the transactions which are being performing in batch is proper. Usually reconciliations is a good control, that we do reconcile the data in our batch processing just to ensure the data is correct. There are different risks associated with business operations. It could be it's mainly classified in 4 areas, but it could be classified in multiple areas or through different ways. But the most acceptable or the easy way of classifying those risks are strategic risk, which is related to the long-term strategy or the business operations. For example, market shifts, regulations changes, which impacts your business to run, embargoes, resource constraints in terms of getting the right raw material, and all this kind of risk could be strategic. Competitors move in, and there is easy way, like there is less barrier for entry, so a lot of competitors in the same business. So these are some of the strategic risks. Then we have compliance in terms of laws, regulations, which we have to comply to run our companies. Then reporting risk, that we have to ensure that all the records are correct and they are being provided on a timely basis, recorded on a timely basis, and the right information is being used for decision making. Operational risk, for example, getting the raw material on time, delivering the services or products to the customers on time. So the supply chain related risk or system connectivity is very much important. And to overcome those risks, we have different frameworks to use for risk management. And mainly it all revolves around these processes. The first process of risk management is to identify the risk, then to assess the likelihood that how frequently that risk may appear within the process, and the impact, what could be the financial, operational, compliance impact of that risk, reputational. Then respond and monitor those risks. It's alive, it's an ongoing activity. Risk management, it's not one-off activity. What are the responses, or what are the mitigation plan that we can use to avoid or to manage those risks, are whether we accept those risks as part of the core business requirement, we avoid this risk by not taking that decision to go for whatever decision we are taking if there are a risk, or reduce by putting some controls mechanism in it. By transferring is more likely getting into partnership, joint ventures, insurance, carrying out insurance related to those activities. And pursue is where we just move on with whatever is the activity, irrespective of their consequences, similar to the accept one. Strategic management, if you look into the words in itself, is about that how we are managing our strategies. So basically, in order to ensure that we allocate our scarce resources more effectively, we look into certain strategies that how we can approach a business, and while doing that we also have to carry out certain activities, which is our action plan, and then we allocate our resources in order to have that competitive edge over our competitors in order to succeed in a business. The strategic management has 5 steps. Basically, the first step is the mission statement, which is the purpose and the values, why the business exists at the first place, that we have to define. Then we carry out situation analysis, in which we look at that how is the long-term growth in that sector or that industry, how our competitors are doing, what our internal strength and weaknesses. So we carry out that situation analysis, and based on that we develop our business strategies. Once that is done, then we implement our plans, and while doing that, we ensure that the controls are there, that we continuously monitor our activities, and eventually the feedback we should be receiving, that how we are performing. Apart from that, operational planning is very much important. Once we have the strategy, then we ensure that that strategy is being turned into tactical level operational plans, and at the very bottom, operational level plans. Basically, it's a cascading effect that we set a target that, let's say, we want to achieve a 15% growth in our revenue, and accordingly we will see that how we can give sales targets to our sales team. What are the key things that we are supposed to do? Maybe we have to introduce a new product, maybe we have to extend our business operation to a new geography, and accordingly that plans is being later on drilled down to a very operational level, where individuals are being made responsible to carry out their work activities in a manner that they achieve their objectives, in order that the overall organizational objective is being achieved at the very top level. So this is how we ensure that strategically we manage our company effectively, while cascading the strategy into operational activities, and then ensuring that the monitoring and the feedback activities is keep on going and on a regular basis, in order for us to track our progress as well. In terms of implementation and controls, there are 4 key ingredients for strategy to be more effectively implemented within an organization. The first thing is that we have to ensure that the culture within the organization is as such where everyone is conscious about the purpose of the organization, and they are willing to dedicate themselves to the organization, and they feel a sense of entitlement where they can go and they can work and they can contribute towards that organization or common purpose. The culture is very much important because it sets the tone, and these are the things which impliedly impact the organization, the individual behavior. The management should be fair, and the top management should be conscious of the employees, the environment, the society, fair dealing. So these are the things which are very much important in terms of culture. Compatibility of the organizational structure with the purpose that we want to achieve. We cannot be in a dynamic market or a tech market or a startup with a very formal structure where there is a lot of hierarchy, where there is formal approval procedures, where there are a lot of titles, where there is a need for additional resources to operate that machinery, similar to a government organization, because they have more maturity in terms of purpose and their processes, but a startup cannot have. So they need to be very dynamic and fluid in terms of changing things where they believe that it will have a greater impact. One more important thing is that we hire the right individual. We need to have adequate resources. So it drills down to competence. The competence within the organization should have in order to achieve those purpose which they are planning to, or mission. And the last thing is the controls. Controls and monitoring are very much important. So that also helps in terms of achievement of the overall organizational objectives. Always remember that the objectives of the organization flow from very top to bottom, and the controls measures flow from bottom to up, which means that we have more operational controls in order to ensure that the overall objective of the organization will be achieved. What are the key purposes of having a strategic controls? It means that we are working at the optimal level. We are using our resources very effectively. So in terms of internal and external efficiencies that we are able to achieve, and operationally we are more effective to overall manage things and to overall achieve the overall target. The second thing is why we do all these things in terms of strategic management, operational plans, in terms of implementation and control. We do it in order to have a competitive edge Competitiveness is very much important for us to not only to survive but to thrive within the industry, within the sector, with our competitors. If you work at the mediocre within any business, then you have a big chance of getting out of the business, because there should be some unique selling point by which you can define yourself, a unique character of your business, a unique product specification, maybe your operation within a very niche market. So there should be something unique. One more key element in terms of defining the strategic competitiveness is about synergy. Synergy is basically a concept where we believe that 2 and 2 is not 5, 2 plus 2 is not 4, is basically 5. This means that when we combine our resources, we receive or we obtain multiplier positive outcome of being uniquely positioning ourselves or our activities within an organization and overall within the market. It could be through customer base, like we are focusing on certain area of the businesses. For example, I will give you an example. Ride-hailing businesses, they initially started with riding services, but then they also get into delivery services. Then they were also, delivering certain things to the customers. Then other unique services that you can reach out to, so that could help you to get maximum sale out of your unique business activity. Your market could be a selling point. For example, if you are geographically located in a market where you have a monopoly or you are among the top player and you are uniquely positioned or have access to wide location within the geography. So with your business, you can start banking services, you can start some other kind of services because you have the reach to the customer. Tech could be one another example. So there could be multiple ways by which you can drive your strategic competence. Customer base is that where you are targeting your customers. Value proposition, which means that what unique feature that you are giving to your customer in terms of your product, in terms of your services. So that could be another way to define your competitiveness within the industry or within the sector. So now let's discuss about competitive strategy. So let's say if you want to enter or you start a business, what are the things that you would be needing in order to form a good business strategy? While doing that, the first thing which you will be doing is looking at the industry or the sector in which you want to have a business. To do that, we have a methodology by which you can, or a tool by which you can assess the industry in which you want to carry out a business activity. That is being given us by Porter, and it calls Porter 5 Forces. The second thing is you also would like to know about who are your competitors and how you would be performing against them. So in order to assess or scan the market in terms of your competition in that sector, you need you have another tool by which you can gauge or scan or analyze the situation. That is called Porter Generic Strategy Framework or Matrix. That is part of our syllabus. The first one, 5 Forces, I'm not so sure, but I haven't seen across, so that I think is not part of it, but I will give you an overview so you can have at least basic understanding. But the second one is where you want to analyze the competition and all. There you can use Porter Generic Strategies model.
The third thing is you also want to know that who you are as a person, as a business. So in order to assess your own strengths and weaknesses, we have another tool which we can use as a SWOT analysis. We call it. It's very famous method of analyzing your own internal factors in terms of strengths and weaknesses, and external factors, opportunities and threats that are posed to you in the given environment. So the first one, Porter 5 forces, have 5 elements in which you try to understand when you are scanning the industry or the sector, that who are the customer, what is their bargaining power, who are your suppliers, what are their bargaining power, what are the barriers for a new entrant to get into that sector, who are your competition, and overall your the competitive environment in which you will be operating, and the element of in terms of the risk of substitute, that how easily people can clone your business idea and become your competitor. So these are the factors which you will be focusing on in order to assess the industry. Porter generic strategies model, I will give you an overview in the next slide. So this is a Porter's competitive strategy model. It looks a bit complicated, but it's pretty simple. Whenever you are thinking of a competitive strategy for a business, you think from 3 dimensions. The first one is whether you want to compete in the business in terms of being a cheaper, cost effectiveness, being or providing services or product in the market at a very lowest rate. The second thing is by selling a unique feature which your competitors are not providing. So that is called differentiation. And the third is a focus strategy, which could be either focusing on a certain segment and then making your costs tailored to cater for that segment, or focusing on differentiation but to a segment or a particular customer base. So it could be anything. So basically, whenever you are intending to compete with your competitors, you want to focus on either cost leadership, differentiation, or focus strategy, which could be either cost or differentiation. Some of the examples I will give. In cost leadership, you can take companies like Amazon, Walmart, which are competing with your competitor in terms of cost of providing services or products at a very cheaper rate. That happened because they have huge economies of scales and coverage, by which they have this edge. Differentiation could be Tesla, because they were the first one in the EV sector, or the first biggest one, or the renowned one, or the one who had more have done R&D and bring a product at a very reasonable cost, when the other options were extremely expensive in the market. So it could be Tesla or Apple. Cost focus could be, let's say you want to focus on a niche. Maybe you want to provide charter plane services to a niche, highly net worth individuals. So that could be something. Differentiation focus could be that you specialize in a certain area for a certain level of customer. For example, you want to be a dress designer for a unique for unique occasions, maybe for weddings only, for party wear or something similar to that. Or maybe you have a cosmetic products which addresses certain type of skin, or which addresses certain age of people or a sector of people. So that could be a thing. So this is how you form your strategy. If you are somewhere in the middle of all, it's not a good thing, because anyone can come in the business and can beat you up, and eventually you will be out of the business. So you have to be somewhere at the extreme of one quadrant of this model. Whenever we talk about cost leadership and differentiation, we have a wide range where we can have the whole industry or sector. But whenever we want to be at a focus strategy, then we have to be servicing or providing our product or services to a very niche group of people or segment. So this is something important, and this is competitive strategy, where by which you can analyze the situation and then you form a strategy, a business strategy, by which you can have a competitive edge over your competitors. So now you analyze your industry and sector through Porter 5 forces. You analyze your competitor through Porter's generic strategy. But what about your own self, your own business? In order to assess your own internal strength and weaknesses, you go for a model which is SWOT analysis, which has 4 components, which could be divided into 2 halves. So the first 2, one, strength and weaknesses, is basically your internal assessment, that what are your key strengths as a business, what are your key weaknesses as a business. And then the other part is opportunities and threats, which is about scanning the environment, and you focus on the external factors, that how you can optimize your opportunities and fight against the threats. So this is another model. I will just show you the picture in the next slide. So you can use this model. This is how it works basically. So whenever you are carrying out a SWOT analysis in your business, you will have 4 areas where you will be focusing on your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And you want to try to transform your from your threats into opportunities by devising certain strategies through which you can optimize your competitive edge and compete in the market. So this is a simple model which you can use to analyze your internal strength and how you can use your internal resources to tap on the opportunities in the external environment. This is another method of analyzing your strategic outlook towards your businesses. Growth share matrix is another approach which you can deploy, but let's have a quick overview of what are the other strategies and where this strategy growth share matrix fits in. The first one was Porter 5 forces, which we use to analyze the industry and the forces in the industry. The second one was Porter generic strategy matrix, which we use to compete with our competitors. The third one was SWOT analysis, in which we carry out the internal and external environment analysis. And the fourth one, BCG growth share matrix, is basically the concept by which we want to assess our business, and within the business we can see how our business units are functioning. This could be applied in different dimensions. For instance, if you are working in a big group and you want to see that whether certain area or certain businesses within that group, how they are performing, and how you want to have a strategy for each area of the business. Because if you are have 4 companies and all are working in different sectors, so you need to have a tailored strategy for each businesses. Having said that, you can also apply this BCG growth share matrix to different products. For example, you or different services that you have launched. For instance, if you launch 4 different products or 4 different strategies, then you want to assess that which one is working or not. At individual level, you can apply this method to your investment strategy, that you have invested in 4 asset classes, and now you want to assess how these asset classes are working and whether you want to exit from any of the asset class or focus on the other. So this can be applied in a different way. It's a generic concept, but it's an amazing concept, because this is how the businesses also devise their strategy, whether to invest in certain sector or certain area of the business or not. So it comprises of 4 components. It's pretty simple and straightforward. Stars are the businesses which have a high market share, and they have also high potential to grow in the market. So these are the companies where the industry sectors are moving at the upward direction, and the company which for which you are devising that strategy, they are also have a greater market share. So that those type of companies you will classify under a star category. In the upcoming slide, we will discuss that how then you can allocate resources to these different categories of businesses. The second category is cash cow. Cash cow are the businesses with the low market growth because the industry is getting mature, but you have a high market share. Maybe you are in the top 2 or top 3 market leader in that sector. So those companies we can classify under cash cows. Dogs are the one which have a low market share and they are in a low growth industry, so you do not want to get into that stage, or maybe the industry or the sector is dying, so in that companies you eventually try to exit from. The fourth one is question mark. Question mark are the businesses that are with a high market worth but a low market share. So there is a potential to grow in that market, but you haven't yet gone through. You can also classify that question mark. Eventually, we try to turn them into stars, and eventually they, with the maturity of that sector, they turn into cash cow, and eventually a decline. If there is a technological disruption, then they turn into dogs, and then we exit. This concept you can apply your investment strategies, because you want to be your certain investments could be into cash cows. For example, in the real estates where there is less of market share, but you want to have a regular income, or stars where you could optimize on any new business area. Dogs could be any investment class that is pretty much with the low growth and low market share. Market share could not be relevant in your personal investments, but market growth, I would classify the bonds into it. Especially these days, it has a better interest rate, but it's generally give you a very low returns. And question marks could be an area of businesses. If you see cryptocurrency in the past, could be question marks. So it can turn into a star, it can turn into or backfire you, and can turn into dogs. So that you have to be very much mindful about. So once you classify your businesses into these 4 categories, then you allocate your scarce resources according to the classification. For example, you want to hold your investments in the cash cows and the stars, because the cash cows bring you cash flow, and the stars has a greater potential to double your investments and bring more cash to you. Build strategy is for question marks. These are the companies which you see a great potential to grow, but since they do not have the market share, so you have to deploy more resources, more investments into that company in order to turn them into a star. Harvest strategy is basically for the cash cow, because most of the time what happened that certain industries or sectors, they reach to their maturity, and eventually there is no further technological advancement, or maybe it will eventually die and they will turn into dogs. So that's where you want to just harvest the cash flow. Divest strategy is basically where you see that businesses are not performing well, the industry is dying, and you do not have enough market share, so you do not want to invest your scarce resources, your personnel, your finances, your energy in those areas. It's better to focus on the areas where you can have more competitive edge, or where there is more room to grow. So in those area of the businesses you try to exit from. So this is how the BCG growth share metrics look like, and this in the other example I have given you that within one business how their different products can be classified into either stars, question mark, cash cow, or dogs. So the business can make a decision whether they want to quit their businesses out of Nestle Milo and focus more on Star, Nescafe, and Nestle yogurts, so that area dairy products, or should they want to continue their investments while being happy with the Maggie. So this is how you devise your different business strategies in order to bring the optimum value for the stakeholders within the sector or within the industry. Operational strategies are basically the one which we have discussed in the first slides as well. First of all, you need to have business strategies and how you translate those strategic business strategies into operational strategies in order to have that, to implement those strategies and have proper control and feedback in order to ensure that we will be able to achieve the overall organizational objectives. So there are 5 components to the operational strategies. The first one is the cost strategy, that how you manage your cost, quality strategy, to what optimal level you want to ensure that to have that quality, delivery strategy, accessibility, flexibility strategy is where you have to change your business dynamics, maybe your product, your services, or your business model based on certain external or internal circumstances, and service strategies, that how you want to differentiate yourself from your peers. So these are the strategies which you focus operationally in order to ensure that your strategic objectives are being met within the organization. There are certain more concepts that we need to be aware of when we talk about, where we have talked already about the strategies in the operation, in the strategic matters of the company and the operation strategies, globalization, multinational, and the global environment. So basically, if we know after the advent of the internet and we know every company has a website these days, so it's pretty much that we are globalized by nature, and it's even cheaper to be global these days and to provide your services across different geographies and countries. So globalization refers to the increasing interconnectedness and interdependence of the world economies, culture, and population. So the initial concept was that we are a global village where we can buy and sell products into different geographies with ease. And the MNCs were the businesses which operate in multiple countries, and they have their own challenges, but they also try to reap the benefit of working in different geographies. If a company have more than 25% of their income driving from more than one country, then we can call them a multinational company. There are certain challenges while operating, while being as a MNC, or there are negative consequences as well. There are 2 aspects of looking at. Sometimes what happened that the company in itself use certain key elements to their advantage. For example, they try to keep their head offices in tax-free jurisdiction to avoid taxes. Sometimes they produce in countries where the labor is cheaper, and thus the countries where the labor is higher, they lack the employment opportunities. And sometimes it works as well, because countries which cannot produce, now they have a foreign company which wants to enter in that market and give them a product or services which they can never previously have access to. So there are positive and negatives. We use the same mechanism to manage the operations of MNCs as a local company, because the certain key area of the activities remain the same: the planning, the organizing, leading, and controlling part. So it's not that different. It is just that how we set up the company in itself, and obviously we have to work being a company with a positive intention to serve the community, not only to serve our shareholder.
Now let's look into what are the cultural elements that are important for internal auditor to understand. It is very much important to understand what is the culture in which the business is operating. There are different dimensions through which we can assess the culture of an organization. The first one is power distance. It's mean that in certain countries or certain organization, it's very hierarchical, and the person who's sitting on the top, the CEO, they are very powerful people. Sometimes they are the owner of the business, and sometimes they are not the owner of the business, but they are, as per the culture, very dominant, most like dictator kind of a person. In such organization, as an auditor, it is important for you to understand that people will not speak up about the wrongdoings or something which is going wrong. It is important for internal auditor, if they understand such culture, they will be able to try to navigate, to identify red flags, indirect ways of issues within the company, and to give a fair opinion or assurance on different processes within the organization to the board and to the audit committee. The second one is individualism. This is also important for understanding the culture of the organization. In some organization, there is so high politics that the people are very much concentrated toward their own self rather than collective achievements of the objective of overall organization. They are in a race against other people. It's maybe a very competitive environment where it's very highly KPI oriented, where everyone is running after achieving their KPIs. In such organization where there is so much high pressure on achieving, for example, if it is more sales incentive, if it is more target incentive, that the people might manipulate the numbers or they might look into more short-term achievement of their objective rather than long-term. So if you are aware of that kind of culture within the organization, then you will look similar kind of red flags or indicators or controls within the processes. It could be contrasted with collectivism instead of individualism, where people are supportive to each other and they are collectively ensuring that the organization achieves its objectives. But in that case, again, there is certain risk that people might not speak up about weaknesses, about other colleagues, because they respect them so much that they feel uneasy to talk about. So you have to understand that as well. Masculinity versus femininity. It is more towards whether the company is very aggressive in achieving their objectives, or it's more that they try to ensure that the organization meet the people expectation, the customer expectation about the quality rather than the quantity. So similar cultures also derive certain kind of behavior within the employees, and if you look into that, then you will be able to understand that in which way you perform your audit to get to the bottom of the issues. Certain organizations I have observed that they are very uncertain. Uncertainty avoidance means that where people are very much fearful of what's going on within the company. Maybe the company is not making a lot of profits, or the company operations are very volatile. And in such organization, people want to seek for more detailed processes and procedures to avoid any mistake to be made accountable for. But when that happens, the organization efficiency is being impacted. So we as an internal auditor, we have to look at if there is excessive control or unnecessary controls, or maybe there are too many procedural activities that are not adding value to the organization. But no one questioned, because people want to feel secure, they avoid change, they avoid initiatives. So you have to understand that kind of cultural perspectives within the organization. Then it comes to time orientation, whether long-term objective or short-term objectives. Certain organizations, they want to just be like a cash cow, achieve the short-term profitability rather than long-term, because they might feel that their industry is dying, or they might be out of the business because of a lot of competition, or sometimes they have a permit or by the government to operate for a certain number of years. So time orientation is also impact, because that will enable how the chief or how the top people, they are making the decision, and how the individual level it is being impacted in terms of their processes. Indulgence versus reluctance. This is another perspective of how you assess an organization culture. You can contrast indulgence with more restrained culture. Indulgence is where the environment is very flexible. There is no proper policies and procedures. People might make decisions by their own. It's more of a flat organization, where indulgence versus restraint. So the restraints would be where people have to abide by the law, abide by the policies and procedures, and follow a specific way. It more happen in mature organization, and indulgence is more happen in creative type of organization, or highly tech-based organization, or companies which are not so mature. They are startups, those kind of companies. Both sort of cultural differences have their own pros and cons. So if we understand whether the organization fall in whichever spectrum, towards indulgence or toward restraint, it will enable us as an internal auditor to look for that kind of supporting evidences or information to assess the processes within the organization, and also to provide more meaningful feedback through our recommendation in the audit report. So overall, how these all topics which we have discussed impact the role of internal auditor. So if you understand the contextual framework of an organization, for what is the purpose of that organization, what are the mission and vision and mission and strategy of the organization, what are the forces that influence the strategy of the organization. If you understand the structure of the organization, the departments within the organization, the way operation happens, the IT role in those operation, overall this contextually, if you understand all these things, you would be better able to come up with a proper annual audit plan. You would be better in a way that you will understand the organization more, the business more. It will enable you to evaluate the governance setup of the organization, the control environment, the risk maturity of the organization, and these will eventually enable you to perform your audit engagements in much more meaningful and impactful way, where when you come up with the audit findings and gaps, you will be able to give the right recommendation, which are more practical to implement and have a meaningful impact within the organization in terms of their efficiency, effectiveness, and achievement of the overall organizational objectives. Here we are at the end of this unit 1, which is about the basics of business. We just had a quick snapshot of understanding the overall context of a business, the strategy, operations, structure, control frameworks, risk management activity within the within the operations. Then we discuss about different kind of market influences that impact the organization. We talk about the IT role within the company. We talk about, in the end, about the cultural importance, understanding the culture of the organization. And lastly, we have discussed that how these all things play their role for enabling an internal auditor to perform their duties in the best possible manner. This is a quick snapshot of the CIA Part 1 Basics of Business. I must say this is not an easy unit. This is, I believe, could be one of the toughest unit from the perspective of so many varied concepts and a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of models that has been used in this unit. If I have to devise the syllabus for CIA Part 2, the first unit I would have kept much more easy and lighter, rather than putting everything about the business within that unit, because it will overwhelm a lot of students, I believe, and they will be they would feel like it's more difficult going forward, rather than more excited and encouraged to follow the rest of the units. However, I must say, achieving the unit 1 put you in a very solid foundation for the upcoming units to understand more easily, and which are relatively easy. So on that note, I will conclude the CIA Part 1 Unit 1 video lecture here, and I wish you good luck. And I must say, keep moving, and it's not that difficult. And I would try to make things more easy and logically reference for you to better understand each unit within the CIA Part 2 for your better information retention and understanding the field work or the core of internal audit for practical purpose as well. I wish you good luck, and till next time, take care of yourself. Remember me and my family in your prayers. And with this video, in the description of this video, you will find a link for a brief summary notes that you can download, where you will find the same data which is being captured in the presentation more briefly, for you to have a quick revision as well. Thank you.